It's football season, and now you can get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do they mean by almost? Can Uber Eats deliver foam fingers? No. But chicken fingers? Yes. Touchdown dances? No. Buttermilk ranches? Yes. Field goals? No. Grilling coals? Yes. There you have it. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
For those that make it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it means you're among the elite, the greats of the game. Hager is the proud maker of the iconic Pro Football Hall of Fame gold jacket, and America's #1 selling suit jacket brand. Hager's expertly tailored, premium quality fabric with built-in stretch and incredible attention to detail dresses you for style, comfort, and class. Take advantage of all the incredible sales now throughout the holiday season. Go to Hager.com for every occasion. Wear what the greats wear. Visit Hager.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, December 27th here, post-Christmas on the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, hello.
How was your Christmas, everybody?
It was great, man. It was great. Exhausting, but fun. How was yours?
Eventful. I had a very full Christmas weekend, and still going.
Love that.
I mean, I got some slippers as usual.
Oh, dad slippers.
At this age, new slippers once a year. Yeah, I had an eventful week as well. I think Jason and I messaged a couple times, but you know, just kids being kids, getting hurt, getting injured. But Betz, yours was super short because your kids are so young that Christmas started at whatever time in the morning and then it was just done, right?
We were done about 9:30 a.m. in my house. Yes, I have 18-month-old twins, so they don't really get it. Their favorite gifts, quote unquote, that we got
idiots.
them. I know, right? Come on. Well, don't you know what you're supposed to do? We got them, just in their stockings, like little snacks they like to eat and stuff like that. And then we got them actual gifts, which they didn't really care at all about. And all they wanted to do was hold their little pouches that they eat. So we could have gotten them $2 gifts and returned everything else, and they would have been just as happy. So you live and you learn. But it was a fun day as our first real Christmas. So it was good, man.
Yeah, Jason, you had those early days when you had twins with Christmas, and it was probably way simpler.
No, we did it up. I mean, at that point, you don't know if you're going to have more, and every Christmas is the first new big experience, so you spin and you build and you wrap and you do everything, even though it's all worthless. It's like when you take a little baby to Disneyland, which, it does not, you should not do that. But no one can stop you from doing that. You think it's really special for that baby who will not know it and will not remember it.
I feel like there's so much of parenting that we could just fast track, but part of the process is, just spending money on stuff that you'll forget you even had a week later.
Yeah.
And our kids will forget. Like half of the toys I bring out of the closet sometimes they're like, I forgot I had this. And so maybe that's something I need to learn is just wait, hide stuff, bring it out, and it feels like they're new toys all over again.
Absolutely. Wrap it again next year.
Like, this sounds oddly familiar, Dad. But I really like this toy. We are glad that you are with us. It is our last episode of 2023 for this Dynasty episode, our Dynasty podcast. And then as we turn the page in 2024, we're going to start talking about prospects. And I'm pretty stoked. It's a pretty great draft class. We're going to start building the Dynasty Pass, going through all of those, start the scouting process.
And
I mean, it's a good time.
To be clear, we are not going away. It's just the calendar is changing. We'll be here next Wednesday and the next Wednesday and the next Wednesday forever.
Just, we don't go away. So, yes, we got a lot of good stuff coming up for 2024. And I thought it would just be a good time to say that if you want to go to footclanvote.com, you can vote on a couple of our podcasts that are up for awards. And that's not something I've been able to say before, but selfishly, Betz and I, the DFS and betting podcast, is up for an award too, right?
Who would have thought? They said it couldn't be done. But here we are, man. Here we are. So yes, what is the group that's putting on the awards? I forget what it is. Sports
podcast.
Okay, that seems very simple. It's a very simple award to win. Us and some other main show that maybe you guys have heard of. It's called the Fantasy Footballers. And Andy, Mike, and Jason, we really want to prop them up. They've never won anything before. So if you guys could please just make their dreams come true, they would really appreciate it.
I think that's what Jason needs this holiday season. Like there's awards, they just don't have enough. You guys don't have any around the office anymore.
No, it's never enough. And I think we deserve it.
Maybe you do.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for us. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about Dynasty sink or swim. That's what I've kind of set up this episode for. A lot of them are veterans that I think people are at the end of their season. You probably got a turd over the last month and you're figuring out, what do I do over the offseason? When is the best time to trade a player, to acquire a player? So we'll talk through some of the toughest situations in Dynasty. But I have a quick question for us, and it has to do with SuperFlex leagues. I'm curious because this one comes in from Jay Stoop 49. And the question is, with guys like Baker and Flacco, he also named Jake Browning, Nick Mullins, emerging as late season boosts, do you guys have any takeaways for Dynasty SuperFlex leagues? Because these guys have emerged from nowhere to maybe even not even on a roster, which is rare to say in a SuperFlex league that Joe Flacco should have been sitting on your wire, right? Like he was at home on the couch. So do you guys have any takeaways that it's more like strategy based or a take home for the future in SuperFlex leagues? Because we've seen a lot of these guys emerge out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a Dynasty. It's kind of a Dynasty best ball, but I'm in the championship right now, and I don't think I would be there if it wasn't for signing Joe Flacco off the waivers in a SuperFlex. He's been phenomenal and helped score a lot of points over the last month to push me over the limit, and I am usually in my SuperFlex leagues still more of the late round quarterback drafter. I might, if there's the ability in the first to grab one of the studs, if this is a startup draft, I'm going to grab one of the studs. If I'm not there, if I'm not in those first, handful of picks, then oftentimes I play with fire and load my roster up with running backs and wide receivers, try to be better than everyone else. And part of the reason for that in SuperFlex leagues is because you can actually find guys off the waiver. Obviously, you would rather have a Jalen Hurts than a Jake Browning, but these guys every single year exist. This isn't a one-off. 2023 isn't like, oh my gosh, can you believe that there's these quarterbacks that you wouldn't have, that were on Dynasty waivers to start the year? I think that you can kind of bank on having enough people out there in these leagues and these SuperFlex dynasties where I've got my team loaded up on my rosters in SuperFlex are loaded on mediocre bench level quarterbacks. I'm basically streaming off of my roster, and I think that that's a viable way to play in a dynasty SuperFlex.
We've seen 58 different starting quarterbacks this year in the NFL. That's like way over the top. You've seen teams like the Vikings, they've had to go through 4 already, and they're already talking, as of this recording, that, hey, maybe we'll go back to Jaron Hall, who barely had a chance. So you're seeing all this influx of different, and the stat we always give is every year you are going to bank on at least 40 different quarterbacks giving you a top 12 performance. It's only 32 teams. So we're seeing an influx this year between injuries, ineffective play, and I love seeing guys that come in. Like Nick Mullins was a disaster this past week. Nick Mullins was also awesome for fantasy because he just kept throwing. And Jason, you've mentioned this way too many times, but we almost like interceptions when you have quarterbacks that just go for it. Their yards per attempt up. So the opportunity for guys like this to step in and say, I'm not just going to be a game manager. I'm going to actually go for it, has been incredible this year.
It's been really interesting to see the quarterback play just in general around the NFL. But I think kind of when Jason was talking, I was thinking to myself, like, it sounds a lot like, in redraft circles or in best ball leagues, like people often do an anchor running back strategy where you take a McCaffrey or, someone in the first round and you just kind of wait on the middle options and then get late round guys. And like, if you have a Hurts, maybe not this year Mahomes, but historically Mahomes, Josh Allen, those just elite options at the top. The quarterback twos, we've talked about this just in startup strategies, in this offseason as well. They get inflated in terms of their perceived value, but as we're seeing, like Jason said, year over year and this year, these kind of middling options don't, A, change your score enough to be meaningful to help you win, and B, they're at risk of losing their job. And that's kind of what we were talking about in the offseason, was just the perceived value of, like, I have a locked-in starter for the next year or 2 years. No, you don't. Mac Jones is not starting, right? Desmond Ridder is not starting. So you lose those options instantly, and that's why building up your strength at running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and kind of not forcing the QB2 issue, to me, is the optimal way to play SuperFlex. Yeah,
what was the stat? I think we said like a third of the league almost turns over year to year from who's the starting quarterback in week 1 to the next year. So I think in SuperFlex, just be open to the fact that you can win with different quarterback combinations. I'm in a league where I'm rebuilding, and I was like, okay, so what does the championship matchup looks like? There's 2 really good teams. One team has Geno and Jared Goff, which is not anything special. And the other one, it's like Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield. It's like, okay, well, it's not great, but those quarterbacks have stayed alive the entire year. Russell's been, I feel like, QB 14 every single week. Nothing special, but nothing that's bombed your team, and they have a bunch of other studs. So you can win with so many different combinations, and I like that approach. If you're in a startup, take a stud, and then take a shotgun approach, knowing that you probably need 3 or 4 guys that you need to. And then here's my last question. When these guys could be available on your wire, is it better just to assume that they could be valuable rather than write them off? Because I look at these guys sometimes on Dynasty wires, and I'm like, I know who Joe Flacco is. Why would I take a chance on this guy? Or Jake Browning, this guy's been a backup. His first game was terrible. I feel like it's easier for me to make up my mind about backup quarterbacks than being open to the fact that maybe they could be helpful.
Always pick them up. Always pick them up. Yeah, I mean, that's my rule. They can prove to be drop worthy. That's fine, but there's no reason to have a starting quarterback in a SuperFlex league that is on the wire, and they won't be. They'll be picked up by someone. Right. So it should be you.
I guess I'm kind of slow the week before the pickup to even just like spend my fab, not just in the offseason or not just in Dynasty. I just feel like there's been so much turnover. Like even the Vikings, I've tried to guess 3 times who their starting quarterback was, and I was wrong over and over again.
Yeah, they've been trying to figure it out too, and they can't, unfortunately. But like Jason was saying, you should pick them up, because if you're not going to, someone else will. And if you have them, quarterbacks in SuperFlex, are valued. People want them, people need them. And worst case scenario is you have, or I guess best case scenario is you have 2 or 3 legit options, and you just have a trade piece on your roster that you're getting a second for him or whatever down the stretch that you wouldn't have otherwise had, right? So yeah, you should definitely be picking them up.
I'm looking at my roster right now that's in the championship. It's SuperFlex league. Let me name you my quarterbacks. I got 9 of them on my roster. I got Kyler, and then Flacco, Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Jared Stidham, Zach Wilson, Brock Purdy, Hendon Hooker, and Will Levis. I mean, you could shotgun this. And at one point, Brock Purdy was just another pointless name, and then all of a sudden, super valuable. And when you've got guys like Jameis Winston that, you're going to have some backups on your roster for sure that aren't playing. But as soon as they become starters, which, from the wire, go get them.
Baker's the name from this list in this question that we've talked about a little bit recently. It's like, okay, well, it seems like they want to work out something. They're probably going to win the division. We've got to figure out with Mike Evans. But it would not shock me if a year from now we're talking about Baker Mayfield and going, yeah, we kind of knew he wasn't an NFL quarterback, like a starting NFL quarterback too long. So it's like you hold this with an open hand when you get gold from nowhere. Like Baker could have been out of the league, or at least just a backup nowhere. So just hold it with an open hand. I'm looking at some of these guys and I'm like, a year from now, let me ask this question. Will we be talking about Joe Flacco?
No, I think a year from now, Joe Flacco will not be playing football.
I mean, after he wins the Super Bowl, he just retires. That's your thought?
Oh, man. Nothing on this planet for football would make me happier than Joe Flacco being the starting quarterback for the Super Bowl champion Cleveland Browns. Because if that were to happen, oh, goodness gracious, you cannot possibly go away from him. You can't say, thank you for your service, you won a Super Bowl, now we've got to go to Deshaun Watson. That just would make me so happy. But won't happen.
It has 1990s Disney movie written all over it. Like guy off the couch, comes out of nowhere, rescues the team. Yeah, I know. Betz and I were talking earlier on DFS and Betting Podcast that Joe Flacco is the story right now, and it's making us forget that Tommy DeVito was even in the league or will be in the league next year. Out of the public consciousness of this is what everyone cares about now. So yeah, love it with Joe Flacco. Let's move on.
Splash.
That's
That is
it?
another. That's a really old drop. Really, really old. Jason, that goes back to 2015. I don't know if we've used that drop since then.
I am pretty confident I've never heard that, including 2015 when it was on my show.
Yeah. So I thought it would work for what we're calling Dynasty Sink or Swim. We're going to list some players and have some discussions talking about the value of these players, maybe going in depth with, hey, maybe here's the reason why over the last, 6 to 7 games, why it's not gone so well. And then kind of discuss, is this a sinking player or a player that you're willing to swim with and actually put in the work? So sink, we're not saying cut this player. We're not saying this player's bad or they're never going to be good again. We're trying to say in Dynasty, is this a sinking asset? And that is one of the worst things in Dynasty, because you can't just refresh and go to the next year. You're actually holding on to a player that used to have a ton of value, and then all of a sudden they're sinking to the bottom of the ocean like a turd. It's just, you can't escape, and you can't go any further. But with swim, what I want to say is you got to put in some work, all right? It's not just a simple, this player's old, we got to move on. If you put in the work in Dynasty, you can still extract value for another year. You can still figure out what's a good trading option. Like last year, let's go with, Dalvin Cook. He would have been a candidate that if you would have towards the end of the season said, I think this guy's a sinking asset, I need to trade before the deadline. Sweet. You probably got it. You maybe got a first because he was still a top 10 running back in terms of what he did on the field. And then now all of a sudden, Betz, if I wanted to offer you Dalvin Cook, would you give me anything in return?
I would give you a 5th round rookie pick. No, I don't even know if I would do that. Truthfully, he's basically out of the league at this point, and I can't believe the Jets paid him what they did. But he's
someone out
probably
there
not going to
last
be on an NFL
year.
roster.
Someone out there last year had to trade Dalvin for a first and Raheem Mostert. You know what I mean?
Something ridiculous.
Oh, mercy.
There's also players that are hitting a quote age range. We've talked about old veteran players here where you can easily write them off and just say they're old, they're done. So Amari Cooper was a top 10 wide receiver last year, but if you look at the last month of the year with Deshaun Watson, it wasn't good, right? You remember how bad Watson was? It could have been a player that you just cut bait with, and then you probably could have cut bait with Amari Cooper, a month or two ago and just said, okay, well, this offense is toast. And now all of a sudden he's a league winner. So it is wild, the fluctuations in value for different players in Dynasty. But I want to open up this conversation and talk about the Chiefs because there's a lot of questions to ask. There's also a lot of overreaction that probably doesn't need to happen. I mean, this is still Patrick Mahomes, who's 28 years old. And in Dynasty, what we're talking here, you don't have to panic and just say he's done, he's not good anymore, he's not elite, this is a bad team. When we've talked last week, Mike mentioned, man, this guy's going to get some weapons soon. So, Betz, I've heard you say this before, and I think it's really important to explain this again to people, but things are never as bad or as good as they seem in fantasy football. So, with Mahomes and the Chiefs, can you kind of use that adage as kind of a way to frame this team?
I think it applies to the NFL too, right? I mean, referenced this with the Raiders 2 weeks ago when they got shut out against the Vikings. Everyone was asking Ian O'Connell at the podium, are you the guy for the job? 4 days later, they put up 63 points. Everyone's, throwing a party. No one cares about what just happened 2 weeks ago. Yeah, of course, things are never as good or as bad as they might seem. But this, for Mahomes and Kelsey, this, I think, game from Christmas really is what Mike was talking about last week. And it's like, when you don't have the dudes around Mahomes, and yes, he's Mahomes, so he can overcome it, more than half the time. But when he doesn't overcome the issues as far as the skill guys go, you can see where the floor really is. And, that game specifically was a lot of just silly fumbles and defensive touchdowns and stuff like that. But he's running for his life back there and trying to create stuff on his own. And, with Rashee Rice, he's been good. He's been a really good story, a good second-round pick, obviously a hit for them. But beyond that, and Kelsey, aging, they don't have other guys. So that's the issue that we were talking about. Yes, Mahomes is still going to be great. No, I'm not panicked on Mahomes. He will still have incredible fantasy days ahead. But with the current state of the team, we're seeing that you don't really have a locked-in top 5 fantasy option every single week like you used to. And, thinking about that, it's like, man, did we really just take for granted a Chiefs offense with Mahomes, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill all on the field together for all those years? So definitely things have changed quite a bit.
I think we used to just pencil Mahomes in and say, he's Superman, he will figure it out. And the problem with that, just locking in that train of thought, is that it doesn't leave room to the fact that he will have human moments. And that's okay. Like, we've seen that with tons of quarterbacks who are all-timers. I mean, like, if you look back, like Brady had seasons where you go, okay, is he off? And the next year he throws.
In 2011, Tom Brady was the quarterback 4, was great for fantasy. The next year was the quarterback 3, was great for fantasy. Then the next year, he was the quarterback 13, and it seemed like, oh, things are slowing down. And then the following years after that, he was a top 10 guy, and then he was the 18th quarterback the year after that, and then he was the 3rd quarterback the year after that, and then he was the 14th. I mean, there are, what you need to know, and what you already know, is that Patrick Mahomes is great. That's it. There's going to be down years. This will be one of them. Next year could be another one back-to-back. I mean, I don't think it's a 0% chance that Travis Kelce retires this offseason. We were talking about that in the studio today. I feel like he could play another 5 years for all I know, but I think he could walk away. I mean, you've heard interviews of him talking about how he thinks about retirement all the time, and every single game that I'm watching, when I see him just take a massive hit, I'm like, that's one hit closer to retirement. He doesn't need the game anymore. But I say all that to say, like, Mahomes in his career for fantasy in Dynasty has been a pretty untouchable asset. The only time that you're able to acquire someone like that is when they have down moments. If Travis Kelce retires this offseason after Mahomes finishes this season, as a low-end quarterback 1, to me, that's the time to go get him. And it's not even to say that next year's going to be great. It's just going to say, now you have the chance to get an all-time quarterback.
Have you guys seen, I mean, with the rumors of retirement, it's like he could go out with his brother at the exact same time and be able to say, let's do this. So I think that's a really good point with Mahomes, and just seeing a range of outcomes. I think we've never really considered the low end at all. Like, not just saying he's done or he's not good for fantasy, but just that year to year for quarterbacks, there is a low end outcome, and it's called TD rate. Like that's one of the biggest things, that if you're not getting these massive spike years, you're going to have a low season. He also has 0 rushing touchdowns this year. So that's not something that we usually would see. You add in 2 or 3 or whatever. That's part of it. But I looked up this stat, and I thought it was really telling of what the offense is. And maybe you guys could color in the details of, how much you guys love MVS and Justin Watson and all the rest of the guys. But Mahomes this year, he is throwing to a non-first read 34% of the time. This is from Arjun Menon on Twitter, but that's the highest of his entire career. And it makes sense when you look at the offense and you see like he's having to think whatever this play is, I'm going to improv, and the improv we're always used to with Mahomes, it's just not working out the same. So I worry sometimes with players that we just kind of assume like they have a superhuman trait. If it's just gone, like Russell Wilson was always that player that off script, you are unbelievable. And there's a certain point in somebody's career, I'm not saying it's there for Mahomes, but a certain point where it's just an outlier thing that isn't going to happen every single year. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on just that we're banking on every single time we look at him play on a field?
I think that's what the Chiefs are banking on currently, right? Like they're like, we know we don't have the guys, but like we're hoping you can just, accommodate for it and be Superman on every play. And that's where the Chiefs' shortcoming is when Mahomes can't be Superman. Someone misses a block, he's under pressure, whatever, his receivers aren't open. He's taking off like crazy. He's running more than he has in his NFL career ever because he has to be Superman. So if those things start to fall apart a little bit and you have that floor, that's really what we're seeing, I think, with the Chiefs offense is just that they don't have the dudes to support him. So we'll see what happens. But I think just to turn the conversation back to Kelce, we didn't really put a bow on it for him. Like, is he a sinking asset or do you have a couple more years? I know we mentioned the retirement stuff, but I was looking at, while you were talking, Kyle, some of his just advanced stuff as far as like his average up the target has gone down in 6 straight years. His yards per route run right now is going to be the lowest since 2016. So like there's kind of some warning signs of like, is this the end? And maybe next year he comes back and catches 9 touchdowns, and because of the state of the tight end position, he's still good. But like, I don't know. I feel like he's a tricky piece because when you have him, you have this perceived, upside, but there's a lot of really good young tight ends that maybe you don't have that tight end one in a season anymore.
Jason, you have him in Dynasty. You also have Trey McBride in that league. So it's kind of but let's just say you didn't have Trey McBride. What would you be doing with Travis Kelce right now? And you just mentioned like the range of outcomes is he's retired and I cannot trade this player for anything.
Yeah, that's in the range of outcomes. It's never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems, unless it's that. It's as bad as it seems if he retires. It's a 0. It's done, and what's the worst is that not only will he score you 0 points, but he will stay on your roster. You know what I mean? Like he's one of those very, very rare guys that will be retired and not on the waiver wire in fantasy dynasty leagues. You're going to wait for Gronk for the comeback, for he's going to itch next year and come and dominate. And so he'd be a hard asset. I mean, I already know right now, like we are, when this offseason hits and trading is opened back up, we're going to see what we can get for Kelce. We're going to need to, and there is value there. This is one of those where you've got to call your shot. If you think he's going to play for a couple more seasons, he's worth anything. I mean, even this year, while we're disappointed the last few weeks, he slowed down, he hasn't been great, he's a super valuable fantasy asset at a very difficult position. So I think you're not wrong to try and call your shot and trade for him if you think he's going to play a while. I will be doing the opposite. I will be selling Travis Kelce, trying to squeeze as much as I can out, get the best deal I can, and capitalize, because to me, Mahomes is obviously a swim and Kelce is a sink.
And you know what? We still have the playoffs. We know that this team could easily turn it on in the AFC and make some noise, so maybe that'll boost his value. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, the New York Jets look to take flight in Cleveland with a hard-hitting battle against the Browns. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF tonight, live from Cleveland. It's the Jets and the Browns on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need a vehicle that can meet your family's needs, and Toyota has you covered. Introducing the first ever Grand Highlander, a midsize SUV with the ideal combination of space, performance, style, and advanced tech. The roomy Grand Highlander never makes you choose between passengers and cargo. You can fit both with ease. With 3 spacious rows and available seating for up to 8, and legroom that makes even long trips comfortable. With Grand Highlander's available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain unlimited and platinum trims, you can be confident you have the power, acceleration, and efficiency needed for almost any adventure your family can cook up. And you'll get where you're going in style with a modern, spacious cabin that's perfect for both playdates and date nights. Impressive tech upgrades take the new Grand Highlander to the next level, including a standard digital key, an available panoramic view mirror, and a 12.3-inch multimedia touchscreen. Don't just live life grander in the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander.
All right, we're back. And you know what? I got to ask this question because we finished Mahomes. We talked about Kelsey. Last week, Mike kind of went through the tight end rankings of like, hey, just based on gut alone, this is where I would rank these players. But I wanted to get a feel of where we would put Mahomes just as a practical exercise right now. You know, we're not going through real rankings and saying this is going to be what it is, but Mahomes is kind of the unquestioned guy in Dynasty. 101 in SuperFlex. That's where he was. So, would you say that you are putting Allen and Hurts above him based on just the unpredictability of Kelsey and question mark of whatever they add? So, where would you put Mahomes in your SuperFlex Dynasty startup rankings?
I mean, you could still argue. I think you could argue for him as the top guy if you wanted to make that argument. I think I would have Hurts and or Allen. Well, probably Hurts actually above him. I'm not sure about Josh Allen. But with Hurts, the reason is I know he's tied to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, at least A.J. Brown for a couple more years. Devonta Smith, they'll pick up his first fifth-year option in 2 years. Is that correct, Kyle? I think?
No, this offseason they have to make the decision.
Which they will. So he'll have those guys for another couple of years. And we'll see what they do with the tush push as far as the NFL ruling. But as long as that's in play for another year or two, depending on what happens, like you get those goal line opportunities as well. So I think just those factors would kind of give me the slight edge on Hurts over Josh Allen, who has question marks with Diggs, and then Pat Mahomes, who has question marks with Travis Kelce. Otherwise, you can make any argument you want for those guys.
With the tush push, I just want to say, like, do you think that he just starts going butt first and then just they have to change the rules for that? Does that change anything?
I really hope that if they do outlaw the tush push, which I hope they do not, but should they, I really hope they find a way to legally beat the system again. You know, it's like, oh, they say you can't have two guys lined up behind and push on this player, and they just find some way to skirt the rules or break the system. I like when
I love it.
Someone can come up with something that's unstoppable. I really enjoy it. Now, I've got Jalen Hurts everywhere. He was a my guy for me last year. I drafted him, in pretty much all my dynasty leagues because I believed in the talent when people were saying he was a bad quarterback, and so I'm biased because I've had all these rushing touchdowns and I love them. But at the same time, it's really on brand for me. I love a superpower that can't be stopped. I want a beatdown, and so I hope it doesn't go away. I really, really do. Hurts is the number one dynasty quarterback to me. I don't think that's really easy to debate that he's not. For me, it would go Hurts, Allen, Mahomes.
So I have Josh Allen, and I've enjoyed the ride for a while. So it's hard for me. I mean, it's the same thing you were saying, Jason. Like, for the last couple of years, if you've had these two players on your team, you're like, gosh, it's been locked in, elite quarterback one play over and over. But yes, Hurts is 2 years younger. And with Josh Allen, we do have some question marks, which leads me into my next player. It's Stefan Diggs. He is the sink or swim player that a lot of people are making their minds up this offseason. I think people would argue the Bills are trying to figure out. Stefan Diggs is trying to figure out if I want to be a part of this team, but he's 30 years old. This is his 9th year in the NFL. And I don't know if you guys have seen his contract, but he is currently under contract for 4 more years with this team. He still has over $40 million guaranteed left on his contract. So the money's going to show up somehow, some way. before we get into his performance and the way this team has changed, do you guys have any read on just the vibes of what this team thinks? And because he is a volatile player, he's always been that way. But now it's like, it wouldn't shock me if he was traded. It wouldn't shock me if he wants to be on the team next week.
Oh, man, I don't think there's any way you can get a read on the human being situation of Stefan Diggs with anybody. You've got a lot of history of crazy diva wide receivers getting their way out of teams in situations where they should have stayed. That's like the only thing you can kind of look to here to say maybe he demands a trade. And if he does, I think the team would trade him. But he's going to be playing football for a while with his contract. And, he is at his lowest value he's ever had right now because he's obviously at his oldest, and he's had about 2 months of really bad performances. I can find a way to excuse almost every single one of those performances. And eventually I find myself going, man, when you make this many excuses, maybe it's not the excuses, maybe it's the man. I feel like I keep making excuses, but I am currently, as of this recording, still in the place where I don't think he's lost it. Really, I don't. I think Stefan Diggs is great. I think he will be very good for fantasy. It's starting to wear on you to keep saying that and feel like, oh man, you're wrong. You're wrong. Sometimes you got to stick to your guns on what you believe, and see it through to the other side. I mean, we'll have an answer to see if he gets it back together or if this is the new normal for Stefan Diggs. But Josh Allen is great. Stefan Diggs has looked good on his underperforming numbers. And as far as what the future holds, there is just no way to predict. The only thing you can look at is he's under contract. The situation should be good going forward. Are you more worried than me, either of you? If you have Diggs, are you actively trying this offseason to get something for him? Because usually in general, when you got a player this age, I am. We talked about that coming into this season. Devontae Adams was on fire, was amazing, was, a top 3 wide receiver, and I'm actively trying to trade him away for a young stud and a first. But where are you at with Diggs?
Yeah, I think I kind of fall in that line as well, where similar to the Devontae Adams thing, where it's like, man, if it's not this year, maybe it's next year, but it's coming pretty quickly. And I think that's kind of concerning for me on the situation is the Bills are winning by not force feeding him the ball. Like, they've got a balanced rushing attack, which has been great. They did not have that at all last year. And it was, okay, Josh Allen, save us, and where is Stefan Diggs? And occasionally, where's Gabe Davis? But now that they have ancillary pieces stepping up out of the backfield, they've got Dalton Kincaid, talented rookie. Gabe Davis literally will come out of nowhere for a huge game. So they don't have to force feed him the rock like they did last year. And you're seeing that drop off in his production, but they're winning. So it's like, if you're the Bills franchise, you do some self-reflection. You're like, man, this has been really good for our offense. I don't think we have to keep doing what we used to do. And so that's my concern with Steph Diggs. Now, we have a huge sample of Diggs being awesome in the NFL. And it's only been, 5-6 weeks kind of as this change has happened. So I don't want to get too stuck on a small sample. I do think he'll have another couple years that are very productive, whether it's with Buffalo or another team. So my fear is that the Bills keep doing what they're doing. Diggs has some mediocre box scores, and then in the offseason, his perceived value is just not enough that you're almost like, okay, well, I guess I'll just hold him and hope for the best. So that's kind of where I'm at with Diggs. If someone's willing to pay, top market dollar for him, sure. But I just don't think that that's going to be happening this offseason.
Right now, so you probably don't have a trade window open, but as we get to the offseason, things open up after the Super Bowl, it is possible that his value does see a boon. Now, with Joe Brady becoming the OC, their pass rate over expectation has dropped a ton. They're bottom 7 since week 12, but his target share is still there, 32%, 29% targets per out run. It's kind of like how you mentioned, Jason, like, you can look at box scores and just say, oh, he's done, but he's still slaying in the areas that he's always been good in the intermediate area this year. He's awesome. He's tied for the league lead with 6 receiving touchdowns in that 11 to 19 yard area that we care about a lot. And Josh Allen is one of the best in the league. The area that has dropped off is the deep plays. And you see that with a lot of aging wide receivers. It's just like, you don't have the same speed anymore. They're not throwing to you as much there. He's never going to be a yak guy. He's pretty small. So on the year, just to give some numbers, he has 20 deep targets. He's caught 5 of them. Only one of them is a contested catch, and they've also had 3 interceptions. So those deep balls have not gone so well. Since Joe Brady took over, he has 6 targets of 20-plus air yards and 0 receptions. So the deep balls being taken away, I still think he's fine. For a dynasty manager, which I am, I feel like right now, if I were to trade him, I would not get fully what I want. There is an ounce where I still can see a wide receiver 1 season next year, and I can hold on. I also think if he's good enough and my team stinks, I could trade him in season for even more. So it's like, there's like a tension of when do I trade him and is he good enough? But Jason laid it out. Dynasty wide receivers, when they hit age 30, it's not good. When they hit age 31, we mentioned before the season, Julio Jones dropped off a cliff. That's when you traded him, Jason. Was between that age, I think 30 season. AJ Green, same thing. DeAndre Hopkins, we're seeing with Devontae Adams, and I think we're going to see it with Diggs. So the window was probably 6 weeks ago.
Well, Kyle, you're the one that has Diggs. Are you planning to try to move him this offseason?
I couldn't move him because I was trying to compete, and then I got kicked out of the playoffs.
No. This coming offseason.
We're trying to decide because we have an Allen Diggs stack, and we don't want to break it up. But we also recognize that our window is closed in a lot of aspects, but we do have George Pickens.
Just throw that in there.
one game, it doesn't matter at all. So, so I'll give you some names. Would you guys rather have Stefan Diggs or the 107 in the upcoming rookie draft?
Diggs.
Truthfully, I haven't done a lot of homework yet on this class, so that's tough for me to answer, but I think I'd take a mid first.
It's tough because whoever I'm taking there, if it's in a non-SuperFlex league, I'm taking the, what would you guys say, 4th best wide receiver, 5th best? And
probably.
So it's am I getting Quentin Johnston? Am I getting Treylon Burks? Like, those are the kind of names the last couple of years that have been available at that spot. And I could also hit gold and find somebody else there, but it's not a guarantee. Mid to late first for a player that, I don't know, would you guys say that Stefan Diggs, let's say he's not a top 10 wide receiver anymore. Does he have at least 2 years left to be a top 20 to 24 receiver?
I definitely, I think so. And I don't believe it's over with him as a top 10 wide receiver either.
Okay. All right. I think you guys have talked me into staying the course and then just not winning a championship, because that's kind of like been my MO in that league recently.
I want a young, proven commodity. You know what I mean? Like Jordan Addison or something like that. I want to know, when you're trading for a 107, your odds at a complete and utter whiff are just a little too high for me. I want to be able to see the proof on the NFL field that, like, oh yeah, this guy is going to work. Give me someone young who maybe hasn't broken out all the way yet, but I can be confident in it.
Yeah. Well, I think he'll be one. I mean, we'll get information, right? We're going to get information, hopefully, about his status and what the team wants to do. Let's take one more break, and we'll be right back.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime. This Thursday, the New York Jets look to take flight in Cleveland with a hard-hitting battle against the Browns. Tune in early for pregame coverage with TNF tonight, live from Cleveland. It's the Jets and the Browns on Thursday Night Football, and it's on Prime. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
You need a vehicle that can meet your family's needs, and Toyota has you covered. Introducing the first ever Grand Highlander, a midsize SUV with the ideal combination of space, performance, style, and advanced tech. The roomy Grand Highlander never makes you choose between passengers and cargo. You can fit both with ease. With 3 spacious rows and available seating for up to 8, and legroom that makes even long trips comfortable. With Grand Highlander's available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain unlimited and platinum trims, you can be confident you have the power, acceleration, and efficiency needed for almost any adventure your family can cook up. And you'll get where you're going in style with a modern, spacious cabin that's perfect for both playdates and date nights. Impressive tech upgrades take the new Grand Highlander to the next level, including a standard digital key, an available panoramic view mirror, and a 12.3-inch multimedia touchscreen. Don't just live life grander in the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander.
All right, we're going to talk about a couple more players for Sink or Swim. The first one here is DeAndre Swift, who turns 25 in 2 weeks. So he's still pretty young. His 4th year in the NFL, and he'll be a free agent. I was looking up some other running backs. He's younger than Jaylen Warren, who feels like he's just got in the league. He's younger than Ty Chandler, who I think everybody loves Ty Chandler right now. He's younger than Najee Harris, but I'm pretty sure everybody is younger than Najee Harris in Dynasty. And then a name that shocked me, he's younger than Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Jacobs. So he's super young. If you've had DeAndre Swift in Dynasty, like, what a roller coaster ride from where he was coming in as an early 2nd round pick in the NFL to, I looked up the height of his Dynasty ADP, guys. At one point, he was the RB5 in startup drafts. So He was like way up there. And then this past year, I could have given you DeAndre Swift and you would have said, I don't want that guy. He was down at RB 22, 23, 24 in startups. And then this year, I felt like he was a valuable piece that hopefully you got some value out of. So Jeremy and I in a league, we had DeAndre Swift and we held out until in the middle of the season, a contender wanted him and we traded Swift for a 2024 first, and Luke Musgrave, and felt like we did pretty good for ourselves.
Yeah, I think
you want us to tell you that you made a good trade?
I think you made a fine trade for what your team was and where it's at. I mean, if you look at his future, you can talk about his age all you want, but age is overblown at running back to me. It's more about contract situation and you know, what's your contract age. He is going to be a free agent, and we don't know where he's going to play next year. And we don't know, you know, we do know that the Eagles are a great spot for him, and that they do not pay for running backs. They are not going to pay big dollars for DeAndre Swift. That would blow my mind. It won't happen. So either he comes back on a cheap team-friendly deal, or he tries to go out and get the most money he can from any team in the league. And that's my expectation after a good year where he's looked really explosive, I think, and he's got a big enough name where I think he'll get a contract this offseason. And then it's just a matter of, like, where does he go? You know, you had 2 decent contracts this offseason that I think could be a blueprint for DeAndre Swift in David Montgomery and Miles Sanders. When you go to a good team like the Lions, your fantasy value is pretty good. Your scoring opportunities are pretty good. When you go to a terrible team like the Carolina Panthers, who have to pay up to have you come to their franchise, Miles Sanders is done. And so I could see both types of that being the outcome for DeAndre Swift. So getting a first rounder for him when there's that much question, I think you made a good deal. Plus Musgrave.
Yeah, I felt pretty good. Betz, you are boots on the ground. You are a local Philly reporter of all things that are Kelly Green. So what is the sentiment of what he's done this year? And then I agree with Jason. It's like, I hate saying that it's kind of foregone conclusion, but it would shock me if he stayed there in Philadelphia. And then you look at that running back room and it's like, well, I mean, Kenneth Gainwell's got 1 more year left and they got nothing else.
Yeah, I think what's kind of wild about the situation, like if you go back to week 1, remember, it was the Kenny Gainwell show. Like Swift was kind of this afterthought, and then Gainwell missed week 2 because of ribs. Swift went bonkers and they said, oh, sweet, look what we have. and he really took the job. Now, that said, I completely agree with what Jason had mentioned, where they're not going to pay him. And he is a hometown kid. He's from the Philly area, so maybe that he says, I'll take the discount and stay with my hometown team. But it's probably his last chance to get paid. And if I'm him and I have a game against the Giants and then the Cardinals and then the Giants, I'm trying to put everything on tape and go get a contract. So I do think there's a real chance he leaves, especially considering that Philly's not going to pay him what other teams will. And so when you leave, a situation where you're playing behind a great offensive line and go somewhere else, could it get better? In theory, sure. Could it get worse? Definitely. Which we saw with Miles Sanders. And the only reason I say it could get better is because he doesn't have a goal line role, because Jalen Hurts just takes everything. So that's really, to me, where it goes. But I think the most likely scenario is that this is going to be a downgrade moving forward, and then he's just another year older, and slowly the value drops off.
I think we wouldn't argue if he's talented enough. It's the usage that it's hard to figure out. Like before this past week against the Giants, where, he had a good game on the ground, took him a while. Like in the first half, he was doing nothing and then kind of exploded in the second half. I mean, the Eagles lost 3 straight. He was the RB 27, 40, 47, and 28. And over a month span, guys, he had 12 receiving yards total. So I think what we want with Swift, or what we've always wanted him to be, is what Jahmyr Gibbs was, like just this explosive back that's being used all over the field and not taken out on certain drives. So he needs to find a role where he gets more than 5 rushing touchdowns. I think that could happen at, being only 25 years old, but anything more than a 2-year contract, I think would shock me. And I haven't really done free agency scouting just yet, but I mean, who's going to pay this guy? I mean, he's going to want more than $10 million, and I don't know if he's worth it.
No, which
Probably
means
not.
It's going to be a bad team. You know what I mean? Like who pays for
Who's a dumb team?
Who pays more than you should for a position you shouldn't pay a lot to? Poorly run franchises. And so I don't see an upgrade possible for Swift. Swift is getting a downgrade this offseason.
Man, that's just a great thought exercise. Just look around the league and ask yourself, who's done dumb things in the past and who could do the same dumb things. Now, if Dave Gettleman was there with the Giants and Saquon moving on, I could say, oh, cool. They'll probably pay a bunch of money. This guy killed us in division. We got to get this guy on our team. But who knows? He'll probably be a Falcon.
Oh, man.
Of course he will be.
No, take that back. Take that gross statement out of your mouth. Disgusting.
No way, dude. They love, or if Arthur's still there, there's no way he's getting anyone to take care from Tyler Algier.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Browns, maybe if they're worried about Chubb's recovery.
That's not a bad destination.
I'm trying to think of the good destinations from teams that usually make poor decisions. Like I know the Browns, they're doing great right now. I'm happy for the Browns fans, but you know, this is the organization that just went and gave a giant guaranteed contract to Voldemort.
We know who it is.
Yeah, and then so I could see them doing that.
I could see the Chargers being like, we won't pay you, Austin Eckler. We're going to pay a guy that's 3 years younger and it's just as explosive, and screw themselves over even more down the line. And it's so hard when you start thinking of teams and what's the logical place. And when it comes to running back contracts, we got to see what the market is, because there are guys, the Saquons, that Josh Jacobs, that we would say are going to get contracts. And then, there's the second tier, and then there's the Tony Pollards. Like, I don't know where all of these guys are going to slot in, but there actually is a pretty good running back market this year. I just think that people are wisening up. I look last year and the money that was given out, it's like, wait, there was a contract given out to Jamal Williams for multiple years. Like there's some weird contracts from last year for running back. So, all right, one more name. This is a name that's pretty near and dear, I think, to both of your hearts. You two have been truthers for a while with Terry McLaurin. He's 28 years old. He's been in the league for 5 years. And guys, he just got engaged. Just did some deep diving. So
wow, thank you for letting me know that.
Were you Terry on his Instagram or something, or what, Kyle?
Yeah. Well, no, it was posted on X. Come on, man. X is going to give it to you. That's the place that's going to give it to you. So he's got, looking at his contract, he's got 1 to 2 years left, depending on what they do with his dead cap numbers. So here's the thing about McLaurin, the offense, all of that, is that McLaurin also has this part that's a human element that when you think of the Commanders and you think of leaders and vocal leaders, he's been the guy and the most well-liked player on the Commanders for years. So my question about McLaurin is that you've never really gotten high-end production. You've gotten good, but not like great production from him. He's been wide receiver 28, 21, 25, 14, 32. That's a good NFL career, and he got his second contract. But we're entering the years where you look at this player, it's going to be 29 this next year, and ask yourself, can I get anything else out of him in Dynasty? Is he sinking or swimming? And does he still carry a name for people? Because I think people look at Terry McLaurin and think, that's a locked-in wide receiver 2 for my team, when this year it hasn't been at all. Like, you can't count on him apart from 2 blow-up games. It's been pretty bad. So, is McLaurin a player that you are trying to acquire because it's a little cheaper, or is there too many unknowns with this team moving forward?
I'm not trying to acquire Terry McLaurin, no. I think, he's kind of capped on his upside. You don't see a situation where the quarterback is going to vastly improve or the coaching staff. I would imagine this offseason that they change the coaching staff. That would be my current guess. And so, but the quarterback is the issue. And Terry McLaurin is okay. But even though, he came in so old, the fact that he's only been in the league 5 years and, he's going to be 29, I don't think that there is a massive upgrade coming for him the way that there was for, DJ Moore's situation changed and he finally got out of that, purgatory of quarterback play. I don't know that happens quick enough for Terry McLaurin, and his name is good. Right now, I think that there's a legit chance that Brissett takes over the rest of the season. We don't know. As of this recording, they have refused to name a starter for this upcoming matchup against San Francisco. But what we have seen from Brissett is that he certainly likes Terry McLaurin and targets him more than Howell. And so if he finishes the season strong, I think his name recognition carries enough weight to be what you said, Kyle, where the other people in the league will say, okay, this is like a solid wide receiver 2 that I can kind of just rely on as a weekly starter, and you can get something for that. And I don't know that he is actually someone you can rely on as a weekly starter. Certainly not someone you should rely on as a weekly starter. Right now, only 41% of his games are hitting the 10.5 point half PPR benchmark that we look for wide receivers.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to someone who has Terry in a couple leagues. One where I was kind of on the fringe and I needed to make a push.
You're going to speak to this person?
I'm speaking to this person, which is myself.
All right, look in the mirror and continue.
And listen here, Betz. I tried to upgrade, from McLaurin to a more proven guy or someone that at least had more upside. And just in my leagues where that was the case, no one really wanted him. So I feel like the value, I know, because he's great. But the reality is the situation is what it is. And I think he wants to be in Washington. Obviously, he got the deal. Like you said, he's kind of been the face of the franchise when they went through some pretty rough times as far as the public perception of them. So, I think he likes that he's there, and obviously they like him. But, you've got the current situation as is, and I know you just posted this, Kyle, the current top 10 picks of the upcoming NFL draft. Jason has mentioned, and I think there's a large amount of us that agree, they want Hal to be the guy, but is he actually the guy? If they're on the clock and they have the choice to take a guy that they value as a rookie, is Terry now playing with a rookie quarterback? And we know what that does usually. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And I think when the dust settles, you just kind of have to accept Terry probably just is who he is, which is a flex player for your roster at this point, a wide receiver 3 most likely for your dynasty team, which is fine, but not going to win you your league.
Washington holds the 3rd pick. Arizona's at 2, which I'm sure you're happy about that, Jason. So it's a valuable pick because what you're looking at, and I think most people would say is, oh, well, it's probably Marvin Harrison and 2 quarterbacks, or it's Marvin Harrison, a quarterback, and an offensive lineman. we're still really early in the draft season, but if they were to take a quarterback, do you think that boosts his value in people's mind? Like if it's Drake May or if it's Caleb Williams, who's at least exciting a name, this is more like selling value. Do you think that you can get a late first for Terry or an early second? Is that where the line is?
I think you can get an early second. I don't believe that a high-end, big-name rookie quarterback will bump Terry up. Most fantasy managers are wise enough now to be aware of what happens when a rookie quarterback comes in. It's very, very rare that a rookie quarterback is going to come in and support a high-end wide receiving option. Obviously, you could try to talk about C.J. Stroud and be like, look, maybe this is going to be his C.J. Stroud, and McLaurin's just needed this guy. This will be the best quarterback that he's ever played with. You can have that narrative, but I think most people know that that's not how it works out usually, almost ever. I mean, rookie quarterbacks, they're not usually good. I mean, you got Herbert, you got Stroud. I feel like that is pretty much the end of the list.
Yeah, Baker was good for his year.
Yeah, but did he support, like, Baker was good that year. Did he support a great wide receiver? No. I mean, it CJ Stroud hopefully can move unwise fantasy managers, and maybe you can get a first for him, but I would be very, very happy to get a first for Terry McLaurin.
I've never been a Terry truther, but I think just selfishly because he's so likable as a person, he's likable as like a leader, I want him to go somewhere where he's like a valuable veteran that can, like, he could be a part of a team, be the wide receiver too, and the team could make a run. Like, you know, Anquan Bolden later in his career was like a valuable wide receiver 2 for teams. He was on the Ravens. Like, he was a good NFL player that finally had a shot to be with a good team. So it's either like you want him to retire as like Mr. Commander and like be a part of the team in the front office, or you want him to go somewhere and compete with a good team. Like, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't hate it if he was a Chief. Just somewhere where he's like valuable.
Yeah, it would be so nice if, like, he's one of the very rare situations where I feel like I would like his value more if he was a free agent. I don't like that he's under contract for the Manders for a couple more years.
Yeah.
Agreed.
His dead cap next year is $29 million. So
he'll be there.
All right, I'm going to throw out this one question with him, and then we can wrap up. Would you rather roll the dice with Quentin Johnston in Dynasty or Terry McLaurin?
That is an easy Terry McLaurin for me.
Okay. Would you rather roll the dice with Jameson Williams or Terry McLaurin?
Jameson Williams. I think he's going to be involved and integrated into the offense next year, and he is actually talented. I'm not sure Quentin Johnston is.
Was this Terry McLaurin or Quentin Johnston?
He's saying he doesn't think Quentin Johnston's talented. He thinks Terry McLaurin's talented.
No, I think Jameson. I think Jameson Williams is a talented prospect, whereas I don't think Quentin Johnston is a talented prospect.
Yes, I agree. I think I would still take Terry, but very close.
I think this is the gamble that you take in Dynasty, is you have an aging asset that could work in a certain situation for a certain team. And if you want to flip them for a younger player who hasn't quite done it yet, but you see glimpses, then that's where you flip it to Jameson Williams. Because I could see either side, Terry McLaurin, Jameson Williams. But those are the gambles that you have to take. And hopefully you hit gold with a player like that. That's going to do it for this episode. Next week, we will get to do a Dynasty Awards episode where we walk through and say who the most valuable players of the year have been. And we'll get to see you again next week. Thanks for joining us. Go to footclanvote.com. You can vote on those podcasts. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
It's football season, and now you can get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do they mean by almost? Can Uber Eats deliver foam fingers? No, But chicken fingers, yes. Touchdown dances, no. Buttermilk ranches, yes. Field goals, no. Grilling coals, yes. There you have it. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.